Hey everybody, it's Jork. Welcome back. Hope you're doing great wherever you are in the world. I wanted to talk today about some reasons, some things that I think I and my wife learned from living abroad, specifically in Portugal, that I think can be helpful to those of you that are looking to move to another country. Um, I'd like to think some of these might resonate with you. I'm also going to guess for many of you that have moved abroad, it'll be, yep, of course, of course. Well, obviously, I don't know that any of these are going to be surprises, but for those that have never done it and are contemplating doing it, I wanted to give you some thoughts, and hopefully this will help as you're having discussions about moving to another country. In this case, I'm going to talk about our time in Portugal, but please don't focus on that. It just happens to be another country. It may not be where you're looking to move to. But the first thing that I would think of, and now that we've looking back on it from our time there, is that we originally were going to move in 2020, July of 2020. We had thought and started the process in 2017, 2018, scouting trips and whatnot. We ended up moving in the fall of 2019. So we ended up moving at a time when you could still move before things got crazy in the world in 2020 and 2021. And I think my first takeaway from our time, our move, was that if there's any way that you can reasonably and responsibly move up your time frame to move someplace, I would do it. If you could, if it's 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, if you can get there before maybe what your estimated time is, I would try to do that. Now, there's a lot of things involved with that, the immigration side of things, and I'll get to that later. But strike while the iron's hot, and because, as I mentioned in a recent video, your health, you never know what it's going to be like in the future. If you have a plan, and is there any way that you can get there before that goal or that time frame, I think is helpful in many ways. Just gives you more time to be in that location. I would say secondly, and this I believe is an obvious, but not everybody sees it that way, is that your experience in another country, I think, is not going to match anyone else's. We're all going to have our unique perspective on what we like and don't like. There may be some themes that other people have that like and don't like about a particular place to live. But where I'm going with that is, what do you want to get out of your move and your experience? You, not trying to impress other immigrants or expats or trying to placate so that you can be in a certain Facebook group or not. But what do you want to get out of where you're living? And I think that's important because getting integrated and being a part of the culture, learning the language, that is a segment of people that really want to do that. And if they can do that and get success, they love it. There's people that have tried that and they didn't. They got super frustrated and they left, in this case, Portugal. For us, we wanted to be able to learn more about the history of Portugal. So from some standpoints, it was culture, but I love history, and so does my wife. So we really wanted to go to historical places and just learn about how how Portugal has been in the eyes of history throughout its history. And that was something that was very important. So being able to go to historic places, being able to partake in some of the, I'll say, the customs, the festivals, that was something that was really important to us. Integrating from a standpoint of having all of our friends be Portuguese was never a goal. We were hoping, and we knew leading into it, that it was hard to be able to get relationships even if you had learned the language. We wanted to be proficient enough that if we were, with the language, speaking of that, if we were to get citizenship or permanent residency, if we were going to go that route, we wanted to have a conversational, A2 is the level, but we wanted to be in what would be the B levels if we were going to stay there a long period of time, to where we could understand maybe a little different dialect or pronunciation in Porto, which is a little different than Lisbon. maybe a little different than in Beja and the Algarve. Um, that was something that was on our priority list. But being fluent in the language wasn't. Being immersed in the culture outside of the historical aspects wasn't that. We wanted to, be hopefully good neighbors and good visitors while we were there. But what is important to you? What's the why of why you're going? I think is very important for you. The thing that also, when you're thinking about, is I always talk about this, and I feel bad saying about this, is that we were able to move at a time to Portugal where bureaucracy wasn't a problem. It wasn't a pain in the what as it is today for tens of thousands of people, not hundreds of thousands of people. Didn't have issues getting our initial residency visa, our appointment, or our cards. And even though my card was delayed because we were in the middle of 2020 or beginning of 2020, it didn't impact what we were doing there or our experience. So it doesn't matter where we were, probably on the planet, we would have had restrictions and issues to deal with. But our renewals as well, our residency renewals, we didn't have issues with those. So a very different perspective. Politics, I've said it, I don't pay attention to politics. I've made videos when there have been elections or maybe some changes to some laws, but I just didn't pay attention. I think it's probably, that was naive on my part. That was I should have learned more about how the politics works. What's the sentiment? What's the political winds and the social winds of Portugal before we moved? It didn't impact our move there. Frankly, it didn't have anything to do with our move away. But for many, it will. The immigration can break you before you even get there, to be honest. The politics, depending on who is in power, what parties, that can change some of the immigrant laws along the way, potentially. And then the social climate. We didn't feel, because I have a YouTube channel, there are people, very, I'll say, prideful Portuguese people that go off and are upset if I say anything negative. There may be some other immigrants that take umbrage too. They don't like it if I tell what I don't like about the country. And I loved a lot of things about the country. There's a lot I could care less about and dislike about the country too. So having a channel, I got more, I'll say, some negative feedback and some people that might recognize me on the streets and make a comment. But most of our social interactions were neutral. There wasn't any negativity for the most part, except when we were leaving. There were just some people that you could just tell there was a kind of more of it wasn't anti-American. I think it was just anti-immigrant sentiment in total, which some parts of Lisbon and some parts of the country were starting to experience. But knowing that when you're moving to a country, knowing the immigration, the politics, the social climate, all of that can change. And just being open to that versus saying, well, this is the way it's always been, just not being naive about that. I think I was a little naive in that. This is going to probably upset some people, but have an exit strategy. And you may go, well, if you're going to make the investment to go someplace, we're not going to have an exit strategy. I've made several videos over the years about having a plan B, but I think it is smart to have an exit strategy for any country you're moving to. Why? For what I just listed. What if immigration changes? Well, maybe you're not all in, because if you can't get into the country, or it takes 2 or 3 years to get a residence card, you may not move to that country. The political shift, if there's a new sheriff in town, so to speak, and there's a new prime minister or president, or the parliament or their elective body changes to where they become more anti-immigrant in some of their laws and policies, well, that's going to directly impact maybe how long you stay someplace. That's something to be very important and think about the exit of, okay, everything's going great, but it can't hurt to have a conversation and just say, okay, if things go south one day, where's our next move? Where's our plan B? Having an exit strategy is important. We had one because at any point, if employment contracts get pulled, we're not there. We can't legally stay. So what's option B or option C? So we worked through, okay, option B was going to be probably moving back. We did have an option C of potentially going to Italy, but some of the immigration at the time was very difficult to be able to move there. So we weren't thinking about that. And then lastly, you may want to think about, do you want to do a slow move versus an actual move? I'll throw that out there because something we didn't think about when we were moving to Portugal. But as we think about retirement and what that's going to look like, we really like the idea of maybe spending 80 to 85 days someplace as opposed to actually moving and dealing with immigration. And because of some of that, even though it was easy for us, knowing how difficult it is for so many people that have moved to different countries, we may just do the slow travel role and spend 2 to 3 months someplace and then come back, and then a few months later go someplace else, as opposed to be committed to moving someplace else in retirement. If any of these resonate with you, or if you've been thinking along those same lines, please leave a message. We'd love to get some communication going with you. As always, thank you so much for watching, and enjoy your travels.